everyone, this is Shel C from PaperOcotilloStudio. Today I'm bringing you another altered tag for the AJOS Abstract August event from Art Joy of Sharing Art community on Facebook. You can come and join that community and join in with us in this month-long prompt challenge by using the link below the video. Just make sure that you answer the questions that pop up when you do, or we won't accept your application because we're trying to keep people who are spamming out of there. So I decided to just go ahead and go back to the beginning, and everyone else that's doing Abstract August so far seems to want to go in order of the prompts. I was just going to be random, but I guess I'll go in order now, even though I'm like, it's day 3 and I've only done one other. But I'm planning on getting it together and doing this. So I decided to use the very first prompt, which is lines. And I have all these. The reason I'm doing tags at the moment, I probably won't do them all through the month, but I have a bunch of tags that have paint on them already. This one has some paint through a stencil that's a blue color, and it's watercolor paint. I can tell that it is, so I don't want to get anything too wet on it. So I'm going to start out with collage, which I often do anyway. You guys know this. I love collage. I like to paint papers and then glue them down to stuff. So that's what I'm doing, and I'm just making a line, an abstract line pattern. Abstract, that's just, I mean, someone was saying they wanted to hear the rules. Abstract art is art that doesn't have reality included. There's not an image there that says, oh, here I am, I'm a bear. You know, it's abstract, but it invokes feeling and interest and still has the same rules about balance and, you know, using a color scheme that is pleasing to the eye, and ways of making your eye move around the project and not fall off the edges of the project. All those things still apply. It's just abstract. It's not meant to make it easy for the viewer to see what it is. It's about the artist who made it and what they were thinking, and maybe you can glean that somewhat from what you're seeing, or maybe you just get something else from it that you enjoy. So it kind of has rules, but not so much. It's really more about what art should be about, which is whatever the artist wants it to be about. It's not about the viewer, it's about the artist. It's not photography, it's art. It's meant to invoke emotion by what it's doing. And the way that it does it in abstract is to use shapes and colors. So I'm going with a complementary color scheme here. I started out with blue, so I'm trying to find colors that are on the opposite side of the color wheel, which is orange is the direct opposite. But then, you know, you got orange, yellow, you got the colors that are beside the colors on the color wheel that you can still put in there. I did think about some yellow maybe as a third color. I'm not thinking so hard about it that it's hurting my brain. I'm just I'm thinking more about lines and what's in between the lines. That's really what this one is about, is the spaces in between the lines, which is a topic that interests me. Reading between the lines about what someone is saying, even though they're saying something, they might mean something absolutely different, and you can tell that by how their body language is, how their eyes are moving, how are they hunched over, are they open, you know, all these things interest me. So that's what this piece is about. Now, if you were a viewer and I hadn't told you that and I hadn't explained it, you'd be like, oh, look, it's pretty lines, you know, or maybe you've got some ideas about geometry, or maybe the only thing you see is, why aren't those lines straight? Why is she tearing them instead of cutting them? You know, it just depends on the viewer and who they are and what they think about. So mostly it's about the colors and the lines. I'm making the lines a little bit not straight, because straight isn't really what I'm about. I don't like straight lines. I like weird shapes and odd angles. And I started out with some paper that has lines on it. So you've got lines within lines here because that's some striped paper from the inside of a security envelope. I like to use that sometimes. It's got a lot of cool patterns, and they're usually very neutral. They're black or gray or blue, often blue. So I guess that's not really neutral, but this one's neutral because it's kind of gray and white stripes. So I started out with that paper, and then I'm filling in the spaces. I end up covering up almost all of the paint that was there, but that's fine. I mean, it gave me the idea of the colors that I was going to use, and there is still some of it peeking through, but not very much. And it's watercolor paint. I know that if I paint over it, it's just going to make a smeary mess. I do end up sealing it up in a bit using watered down gesso just so that I can start painting over the top, because I decided I wanted to do that. So I'm using different tools, scissors, a, a metal ruler that I like to use for tearing, and then I also have an X-Acto knife with a new sharp blade. I just bought a package of blades. My other blade was so dull, so dull. It wouldn't cut anything. It would just tear. So I finally remembered to buy a package of blades for my X-Acto knife. So I did use that a little bit. Here's where I'm just using a large flat brush to just go over the whole thing with some watered down gesso and seal everything and kind of mute everything and give it a very matte finish so that I could, because I noticed some things about the, even like the security envelope, when I tried to wipe off a little mark, it ended up smearing the gray ink on there and making a big smear, and I didn't like that. So I did want everything to be sealed. I could have used matte medium to do that too, but I ended up just using some white gesso because I wanted to just, I don't know, I felt like I just needed to calm it down for some reason. I don't know why. So I have this bin of what are these things called? Dina Wakeley scribble sticks. They're in Dina Wakeley's colors, like night and sky and cheddar and elephant and all those. And I have all three sets here. I was taking a class with Dina Wakeley that I purchased online to learn about scribble sticks because I found out that they are actually acrylic paint, even though they are water soluble for a little amount of time. Apparently, they seal down to almost permanent, according to Dina Wakeley. And I wanted to learn about that. I want to learn how to use them because that means they're different than my other kinds of crayons like Neocolor 2, which is my favorite. And so I took this class, and when I was taking the class, I thought, well, I needed more scribble sticks to do the class because I only had one set. And so I ordered more before the class started. So I ended up with all three sets. Maybe I shouldn't have done that. Maybe I should have just stuck with one. But anyway, if you're going to buy the sets, the one with the pastels in it, I don't think is particularly useful. Has all the really light colors. For me, that one I think is going to be kind of a waste of money. But maybe you really love them. Maybe you want all the colors. Maybe you use pastel colors. I don't use them as much. So I would probably get set 1 and set 3 if you wanted to get some. But I found a good way to use them when I was in the class to get them to really work is to dip them in water, because they are water activated apparently. But then apparently, from what I've heard, that when they dry down, they're permanent or almost permanent. So I've got a little dish here. I put some water in it, and I'm just dipping the tip of the stick into the water and then using it. And it's giving me a watercolory effect. It's, you can get the pooling and the mixing and all the interesting stuff about watercolor by doing it this way. And since the tag had started out watercolor, I figured I'd go watery with it. So I also have a little brush here, water tank brush that I'm using to blend in some cases. The red color was really bright, and I wanted to just kind of put it in some areas and then blend it out like it would be watery. because that's how I felt like going with it. Then after everything was dry, the scribble sticks were dry, I am using a Stabilo all pencil, but this one isn't the black, it's the graphite color. I didn't want like solid black. I wanted something more muted than that. So I ended up using gray. Gray is the darkest color on here, although when you look at it, there's so much contrast. You might think it's black, but it's not. It's gray. I even used gray ink around the edges because I didn't want to go with a black today. So this is a highly water reactive pencil. If I got water on it, it would definitely smear and run. But for my purposes, I'm not going to, well, I guess I did blend a little bit, but I'm not going to blend out much of it. And what I'm thinking about is these little spaces and shapes that are created in between the lines, because the lines are obvious. You know, there's some vertical ones, there's some horizontal ones. Well, I mean, they're vertical-ish, diagonally, vertical, not completely diagonally. Anyway, you know what I'm saying. Those are obvious, but what kind of interesting shapes come out in between when you cross the lines and when you, I don't know, it just, that's what's interesting to me about this piece. So then I ended up getting out my white Posca pen. This is a fine tip, not the extra fine, but the fine. And I started highlighting some of those shapes, which mostly turn out to be diamonds and triangles, which is kind of cool too. And just picking out some of the smaller shapes and giving them some lines around them to make them stand out from the background. I'm not going to say the P word. If you guys are longtime followers of my channel, you know that what word I'm talking about. I hate that word. Everyone says it on every show and every video I ever watch. They say that. So I'm not going to say it. But you know what I mean. Stand out from the background. So then I thought I wanted to deepen and give another layer of color to a few of these shapes. So I did that with the scribble sticks again. And then what did I do? Oh, and then I decided that the most important shape on there was going to be the one that is where, okay, lines. If you do a third and a third, and then you make that area where those two thirds cross, that's a good place to put a focal image. And so that's what I did. I guess haven't got to that part yet, but that's where I was going around the edges. Okay, here. So that's kind of a third and a third, right, of the composition. I don't know if you guys understand what I mean, but that shape right there turns out to be the most interesting one and the focal image. So I colored it in with the white, and then I went over it with glitter and gave it some glitter so that it stood out. I hope you guys will join us with AJOS Abstract August. Just use that hashtag anytime you post anywhere on social media so we can find you. Also, you can post your pieces in the group. And I hope you guys are enjoying this video. And if you are, please remember to give it a thumbs up and leave me a comment, a question, subscribe, turn on your notification bells, pin this on Pinterest. I've created a board as well on my Pinterest for all these abstract pieces as well as pegs. So that's it for me for today. Thanks. Bye-bye.